My name is Megan Peng, and my project is titled Gender Roles and Its Expression in Science, Navigating the Rise of Ruth Patrick's Career from 1945 to 1975. So my project focuses on the interaction between gender and science, and specifically I looked at the rise of the career of Ruth Patrick, who was a pioneering ecologist in the 20th century, as an example of how her gender identity and expression influenced her professional life. And so while this project did focus on one person, I tried to supplement and balance Patrick's account with a broader social and feminist trend to piece together how gender intersects with science in a real-world aspect. And so to get a better understanding of Patrick's life, I examined her autobiography, her interviews, and her interactions with colleagues. And to access this material, I looked at a lot of resources from the Ruth Patrick papers at the Academy of Natural Sciences, supplementing it with many secondary sources to understand Patrick's career in a more gender-oriented historical context. And so I looked at her correspondence with her colleagues, which provided a glimpse into her professional career as well. And so throughout the summer, our group who was working on the Ruth Patrick project with Dr. Ackert also got the chance to talk to many different people from many different backgrounds and experiences, such as archivists, a master's student who has quite extensive knowledge on Patrick, and other professors in the history department as well. And this was a really new experience for me, especially since I'm not really familiar with the history department, being a biology major myself. And so along the way of developing this project, there were bumps and there were curves in the road. My thesis underwent a lot of revisions. I started out interested in Patrick's writing style, and that kind of transformed into looking at how her interactions with her colleagues reflected her identity, and it kind of ended up to my current thesis on gender roles and expression in science. And so since this project was more of an independently guided process, I also had to learn what research methods work for me, especially remotely, how to develop my questions into papers and projects, and how to condense these key parts of the project into a communicable result like a poster. Throughout this entire process, there were things that I learned about Patrick and gender, but I also learned so many research skills that are universal and applicable outside of this one project. And so what did I learn about Patrick's career? Patrick herself wasn't just a pioneer in ecology and environmentalism, but a pioneer in breaking the female scientist social role. She helped break the mold of what was expected from a quote-unquote woman in science. Originally, science was a pretty masculine field. It prioritized masculine traits such as objectivity and leadership, so there wasn't a lot of room for people who fit more of the feminine gender role like Patrick. Some of her colleagues, for example, favored more masculine appearances, preferring to dress more plainly and not wear very much makeup. In comparison, Patrick didn't understand why she had to reject her physical femininity in order to be accepted in the scientific community, and embraced many of the characteristics that her colleagues minimized, and this was not really common in her time, especially before the feminist movement in the 60s and 70s. And this is just one example of many that occurred throughout Patrick's career, but it speaks to how she wasn't afraid to go against the status quo and gender norms. And so overall, gender is so much more prevalent in our society than I originally thought, and not just within the field of science. It's so deeply rooted within our culture that it's hard to break out of the social construct as a minority and have it be accepted by the majority. And so to create a long-lasting, effective change in terms of gender bias, gender discrimination, and things like implicit bias that we may not even be aware of, it requires an effort beyond just the field of science. It really requires a type of social reconceptualization of multiple disciplines and institutions, because gender is so interwoven with American culture. Is there a step-by-step, clear-cut solution to these issues? No, especially since the issues themselves are so diverse. However, by studying scientists and professionals like Patrick and many others, hopefully we can learn a little bit and get a better idea of how we can navigate similar issues in our own lives.